Hola, hola, mi gente. Welcome to another episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. And today we have Solimar with us, Solimar Williams. She is an Afro-Latina born in the Dominican Republic. How are you, Solimar? How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Super excited to be here. How are you?
I'm good. Like I said, I'm a little tired. I almost fell asleep. My husband's in the room already napping. Like but I am good and I'm really excited to talk about what you're doing because when I got your guest form, I was like, oh my gosh, this is something that I'm trying to do in regards to sustainable fashion and not having so much fast fashion. But I love the fact that you're trying to do it in an affordable way because that is, I think that's the challenge. So you can tell us all about that. But before we get into all the chisme, we always start with the wine. So please share it, if you're drinking wine, what wine you're drinking or whatever else you have in front of you today.
So I'm a silver girly because alcohol doesn't sit well with me, but I have my water.
There you
So
go. And you know what? I always put, in the things that, because sometimes people are like, do I have to drink? And I'm like, no, like I'm not forcing anybody to drink. That's not what this podcast is about. I mean, there's an aspect of that, right? However, everybody has their own journey. And if you don't drink,
yeah.
and I've had sober, like just actual sober people, not be people on here, or people who've had challenges, and it's okay. Like the most
Yeah.
important part is to talk about their journey. However, I do drink wine during the podcast.
Yeah.
And today I am having a 2019 Malbec from Oak Mountain Winery in Temecula. So uh, it is one of the very few, I think there's two, possibly, well, I think there's three within the Temecula Valley area that are Latin owned. This is a Mexican American owned one in Temecula. The view is spectacular. We've Johnny Leon, the owner, has actually been on the podcast and he has been super gracious in regards to donating some wine for our event. So let me just say this. I am normally not a Malbec person. Uh and Malbec does originate from Argentina, but I'm not gonna lie, this to me, this Malbec is actually better than the ones that I've had from Argentina. And I'm sure I'm gonna get hate like, what? You can't you I this one, you know what? It's just really smooth. It has some flavors of blackberry and cranberry and some spices, like some spice. Um, so it's really smooth and really velvety. So it's something that I popped it open the other day because I wanted to try it and it's so good. So that's what I'm having today. If you can see, it's a nice dark color. It's like when I have the background on, it's hard to see, but this is definitely nice and really good on the nose because sometimes Malbecs you just smell the alcohol, and this one you don't. So as I'm swirling it, so salud.
Salud. I'll have to show it to my sister-in-law. She loves wine. She's like a huge wine connoisseur.
Oh, really? Well, let her know, and I actually created the very first directory of Latina wine brands based in the United States.
Nice.
So, like I said, it's been really hard for me to find stuff in Southern California. I know that you are in the LA area. So, if she ever goes to Temecula and stuff, she definitely has to go to Oak Mountain. There, I mean, like I said, the views are best, and it's the only wine cave in Temecula Valley.
Nice.
So
I'll
she's a
I'll
wine person.
They're coming in January, so I'll plan a little something with her.
Nice. Where does she live?
So most of my in-laws live in Florida. Um, some of my husband's family, like him and two of his siblings, were actually born in LA, and then they moved to Florida when they were about 5. Well, he was about 5. They were a little older. Um, so they're always traveling back and forth. We're all always traveling back and forth.
Yeah.
So, and then my family lives half in the Dominican Republic, half in New York.
Oh, nice. I'll
So
be in New York like the first week of October for an event.
nice,
Throwing
nice.
an event over there. So, well, let me read your bio. Because like I said, I'm really excited to talk about sustainable fashion and everything. And there's just some really cool stuff. So Sol Williams is an Afro-Latina born and raised in the Dominican Republic. She moved to New York when she was 17 in the pursuit of her dream of becoming a fashion designer. Years later, she moved to California, and that is where un is it it's unbirthed or unbothered.
Unbothered.
Okay, that's what I initially thought. Then all of a sudden I was like, maybe it's unbirthed. Unbirthed was born. Or I mean unbothered.
Unbothered.
See, look, I stuck that in my head for no reason. Unbothered became the name because she believes that in order to achieve happiness and your dreams, you must remain unbothered by outside troubles. You must always focus on you and what makes you happy. Girl, if that is not the truth, right? And it is so hard to remain unbothered just in everything in life. But I want to start in the beginning because you, up until you were 17, you're like, you are still a DR girl. You will ever forever be a DR girl. But you're really like truly raised until like your formative years in the Dominican Republic. So I would love to hear like how how you grew up and how um living in the Dominican Republic and then moving here, and we'll get more into it, but just like on the surface level to start, like how was that experience growing up in the DR and knowing that you don't like when did you let's just start there. I have so many I will ramble off like 20 questions if I don't stop myself. So let's just start there.
So growing up there, honestly, I, as an adult, see it as a blessing. I grew up around so much culture. I had such a close niche of friends because a lot of the people I went to school with, we started in like kindergarten and went all the way up to like when I left, which was 11th grade or like the end of my 11th grade. Um, was raised by my grandparents, had most of my family there with me. And I mean, there's nothing compared to island living, you know? Everybody's super chill. You have the water right there. The food is amazing. The weather's always nice. So super grateful that I got to grow up there and I've gotten to experience different cultures in life and even moving around. I'm super grateful that I'm able to kind of immerse myself into different living environments and cultures.
So growing up, because obviously the DR is, especially now, is a place where people like to go vacation and everything. Was that something that you noticed growing up? And did you see a difference, or how did you feel people perceived locals in the DR versus like the tourists?
So I grew up in the city, in the main city, Santo Domingo, and where I went to school and where I lived really close by, it happens to be the touristic area. So Zona Colonial is where all the like things you want to see in the city are. So Christopher Columbus's house, Parque España, all that, all those things, the cathedral, which is the oldest cathedral in the Caribbean, all those things were like right by my school. My school was across the street from where uh one of the big things that you go see. And so I was always around tourists one way or another because we will always for school do tours of all the touristic sites and like we will have to write papers about it and all that because it's part of our education. And I think the biggest difference is that growing up there's a lot of colorism in the Hispanic community in general.
Yes.
Um, but you know, I wouldn't necessarily say I encounter racism from my own people. I wouldn't say that. I don't think I did, but I could see it like from a third point of view, right? And so the tourists, what was interesting is that they loved people of color in the island. Like they were like obsessed, right? And so the darker the person, the more beautiful they thought that person was. And so it was interesting to see the contrast. And maybe as a child, I didn't really get it. But now as an adult, I can really see how that contrast was of as to how, tourists were a lot more open to people of color in the island than the people that are from the island per se.
So it's interesting you say, and I'm really interested in how you perceive this. I didn't know Christopher Columbus had a house in the Dominican Republic. Obviously, we view him in a very different way. How does the DR view that and having his house on the island? How is that something that's polarizing? Is it something that's like a that's hurtful, or is it something that's celebrated?
I wouldn't say it's celebrated. It's just kind of taught us a part of history, right? So they teach it as it was. He came to the island. There was already people that were native to the islands, to Americas in general. He
Mhm.
came to the places. There was people that were native to the places. He tricked them into becoming his slaves and all that. So they teach history as it is. They never like sugarcoated it or like made him seem grand per se.
Mhm.
And the house is more of a monument of like, this is where he lived, this is how they lived, this is how tall they were, or the bedding they used, or whatever, in comparison with if you go to other parts of the island, you can see how some of the natives lived, right? So I don't think they idolize it. I think that because it's there as a historical site,
Mhm.
but it's not like they idolize Christopher Columbus in a way of like, oh, he's, a
Yeah, he's
savior or
definitely not
whatever.
revered or anything like
Right,
that.
right, right.
That's so crazy. I look at it. See, I'm already learning something. 5 minutes in, I'm already learning something from you. That is so crazy because obviously, growing up in the States, you learn that in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, with Nina Pinta de Santa Maria, and that he, discovered the Americas and blah, blah, blah. And obviously, as you get older, you learn like that's not the case. Like you can't discover a place that there are people that are already living. And then obviously we know all of the travesty and the pain that he brought along with him. And so that's just really interesting that to have that there. I don't know if they would. I feel like that would be so divisive if it was in mainland, well, if it was in the US. Like that house
Yeah.
would be like people would be like, no, it needs to be torn down. Some people would be like, no, it's that like so the fact that it's almost not necessarily neutral, but it's just like, hey, this is where this person lived at, and you guys teach history as it was. I wish that would happen more often here. No kidding. There's just I mean, I'm sure there's just so much that has happened in regards to wanting to erase history, but I think that we don't learn if we don't learn the correct history. We don't learn how to be better if we don't learn the correct history and the pain that came along with it. That doesn't mean you need to hold that pain. That means that there's a lot of pain and it's generational that comes along with it. So that's so interesting. Now, you obviously are a fashion designer and everything. Growing up, how was fashion integrated in your daily life?
Oh my God. I was always obsessed. Like fashion has always been my thing amongst my friends. I was kind of like the fashion girl. Um, all the time. I was just so intrigued by how you can like customize things and have your wardrobe reflect your personality or how you're feeling that day. And I used to do mood boards, and I didn't know there were mood boards at the time because I was like 7 or 8. But my grandpa would get the newspaper every day, and on Saturdays there was like a fashion magazine that came with the newspaper, and he would always give that to me. And so whenever an article was interesting, or the images of the models with the pieces of clothing, I will always cut those up and put them in this notebook that I had. And then I will always have drawing notebooks where I would draw dresses and suits and things. And then I was planning to have a quinceañera. I didn't end up having one, but I was planning to have one, and I designed and drew my quinceañera dress. That was very important to me. So I've always somehow, some way been into the fashion, and it was always my goal to have a fashion brand at some point in life.
Um, do you mind if I ask why you didn't end up having a quince? Because I would imagine you were like sitting here designing your dress and doing all of these things, and then to not have it, was there like a major thing that happened where you didn't have it?
Yeah, there was kind of a family emergency. One of my aunts had to have surgery, and her daughter was the one helping me plan the party. So like obviously her focus shift to her
Right.
mom. But honestly, I was never fully crazy about having the actual party. I was more excited about designing the dress than having the party. Um, because my friends and I obviously were all the same, around the same age. I was one of the older kids in my grade. Like my birthday was first in the year.
Mhm.
And so I knew I had like a ton of quinceañeras coming during the year.
So do
And so I
math.
was just like, well, I mean, I don't have to have one. But
Yeah.
my family ended up planning like a nice dinner with all my friends. And then I went to like a resort, like an all-inclusive, for like a weekend with my mom and my sisters and stuff. So it was nice. Um,
Nice.
I wish I would have designed a dress. I wish I would have
Uh,
gotten a dress, but it wasn't meant to be.
My parents told me I could have a quince or I could have a car. And I was like, car. I want a car.
Yeah,
But
100%.
what I should have stipulated is, well, if you give me a car, will you give me a car that costs as much as you would spend on a quince? Because my first car, let me tell you, was an 81 Honda Accord hatchback, silver with red interior. And I remember my senior year, that thing would break down so often. Like if I slowed down too much, it would sputter. And I
Oh
was
my
going
God.
to a high school that was like really like bougie and everything in Albuquerque. And I spent my last 2 years of high school in New Mexico, and it was so embarrassing because you have all these kids that have like BMWs and Range Rovers, and I'm like, oh, I was so embarrassed. So I should have that should have been my stipulation.
But we didn't
But
know any better back then. We
yeah,
were like, a
didn't know any
car?
better.
Sure, any
Yeah,
car
I
is
was like,
good.
exactly. I love that that's something that you knew, like, guys, 6, 7 years old. That's crazy to like already be obsessed with it. At what point, like, obviously your grandpa was like encouraging that because he would give you these magazines. How was your other family? How were your parents, or if you have any siblings, how were they? Were they all encouraging like for this love, or were they just like, get your head out of the clouds? You need to be realistic of what you want to do.
Well, I will say I grew up in a very particular situation where I didn't necessarily grow up with my siblings. They would come and visit in the summers, but they were raised in the States and I was raised in the Dominican Republic by my grandparents. But I will say half of my family was really encouraging. My grandma, I think because I was really good at numbers and I was a very meticulous person, she saw me being like a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant or something like that. And so she never really saw the entrepreneurial mindset in me, I guess. And so she would always be like, why do you want to go to fashion school? Just go to like law school or go to med school. Because I used to watch so many medical documentaries when I was younger too, like open heart surgeries and births and like all my family's like, why are you watching this? And I'm like, I don't know, it's interesting. And so my grandparents thought I was gonna be a doctor for a long time. And I'm like, no, I just like to watch it. Like I like to obtain knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like submerging myself into that particular field. So I would say that was the only pushback, but now everybody's super supportive. Like my grandma, every time I go visit, she has a couple of pieces from the brand. She'll make sure she pulls one out and wears it in front of me, and
Oh,
she'll tell me, she's like, look, I'm wearing your shirt. So, and my grandpa, I brought him a sweatshirt and it was so funny. It was one of our hoodies. And he was like, did you make this for me? Because it fits like a glove. And I was like, no, I have it in my store. And he was like, oh my God. I love it. This is such good quality. And they were always super encouraging once I started my brand. They were like, everybody has been 100% behind me. So I do feel super supportive.
so, I would imagine island wear, Dominican, I mean, obviously, like fashion within like Mexico and the United States, there's some similarities, but there's definitely differences, right? There's definitely things that are very Mexican. I would imagine it would be the same for between the States and the DR, is there's things that are very Dominican in particular to that. So having siblings in the States, would they draw inspiration from like what you're wearing on the island, and vice versa? Would you draw inspiration from what would they bring stuff from the States for you to wear, and you're like, oh, let me mix and match this and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I would say that when I was growing up, the fashion game in DR wasn't that great. So my mom would always send like these suitcases and boxes. And whenever anybody was going to DR, she would make sure to send stuff for me. So I always kind of had the fashion coming from the US. And I was always in love with every piece that was sent my way. So there was a few things growing up that like I remember I had this dress that I was like in love with for one of my birthday parties, and it was like custom made. My grandma took me to a seamstress and picked out the fabric and did everything. And I think I was like 4 years old, but I still remember this dress. It was so pretty. So, I mean, I think the fashion over there is still evolving. It's not as big. People tend to stick to the Zaras and the H&Ms and things like that. They don't really like try to deviate from that to like smaller own brands. But I think I drew inspiration from everywhere, just being an island girl and like how I wanted to dress when I lived over there, which is a very conservative island, because they're all Catholic. And so they always tell me like dress girls like this and boys dress like that. So like what I'm wearing will be considered masculine, right? And so I think my rebellious side of like wanting to dress comfortably and not wanting to be put in a box because of the way I dress was what pushed me. So that's the kind of the influence the island had on me and the brand.
I want to go back to something that you had said. Hold on real quick. Can you hear the sirens?
Yeah.
I'll edit this.
No, you're fine.
Okay. You said that you're the only, and again, if you don't want to talk about this, this is cool. Like we can edit it out if need be, whatever. But you said you were the only one, you were raised by your grandparents and you were the only one raised on the island, and at the very least, your mom and your siblings were in the States. How did that come to be? And was that ever a source of content or conflict inside? Like, why am I here and everybody else is in the States?
Well, it's interesting because for the most part, I was fine. I had my life. Like, it wasn't really something that I would think about all the time, but it was a constant conversation that my grandparents would have with me of like, you're eventually going to move to the States with your mom and your siblings. But my dad actually ended up leaving the island first, and then my mom went to meet him in New York, and it just never worked out for me to move. And then with them living in the States, I couldn't just come to the States with a visa. I needed to have like a green card or a citizenship to go to the States because both of my parents lived in the States. So I was at risk for like staying over. Um, and so that's kind of how that happened. And with, I think the most difficult part of being separated from my mom and my siblings was that when my siblings would come visit, I had the biggest jealousy issue because I was an only child, essentially. I was always by myself and all the attention was on me. And I was also the baby of the family over there. So everything was for me. And so when they would come and I was younger, obviously, it would be like the arguments and the fights. No, why are you giving that's mine or whatever. So that was the biggest issue. And obviously being a kid and being young, like I would lash out and tell my grandparents, "Oh, you're not my mom, you're not my dad," or whatever when I was like upset. But I honestly view them as my mom and dad as well. So I call them mom and dad, and I call my mom mom still. So when I'm talking about both of my moms, I'm like mom this and mom that. But I don't think I don't think it costs that much psychological damage, I would say, in me because my grandparents were always super open and very um direct with the fact that they're my grandparents and my parents live in the States and I will eventually be moving to the States. So they prepared me for this. Like I learned English while I was in the ER. Um, they had me learn a lot of different skills just in case I ever needed anything in life, you know. So I think they did a really good job with that and raising me knowing that I had parents elsewhere as well.
I think I find that always so fascinating just because it could, I think it's probably a blessing that I'm sure it was a blessing that your grandparents talked to you about that all the time because it wasn't like a culture shock or you knew what was going on, like in regards to why something was happening versus just not knowing. And then you could have been a kid going, why doesn't my mom and want me? But in your case, it doesn't feel like that was the case. Like you didn't feel unwanted, just felt like these are the circumstances that are happening. And eventually
Yeah.
I will be reunited with my family.
Right, right. And my mom did a really good job at keeping in touch and calling all the time and um sending me things and all of that. So it's not like she was absent at all either. She did as best as she could under her circumstances. So it was always an open line of communication. And I feel like I grew up with like a bonus family, even though they are my family by blood. But like,
Right.
I just feel like I grew up with like bonus parents, I call it.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful because some people, the way I view it is that some people don't have enough people to take care of them. And I had a surplus of people taking care of me.
Oh, that's a lovely way to look at it. I think a lot of us, maybe not in that exact circumstance, but a lot of us, when you come from, a Latino community, oftentimes everybody's helping raise each other. I
Yeah.
know for the first few years of my life, we lived with my grandparents. Me and my mom lived with my grandparents, and then when my grandma died, my grandpa moved in with me and my mom and dad. And, it's just one of those things where we take care of each other and we do what we have to do to make sure that the family unit stays intact in some way, shape, or form.
Right, right.
So knowing you wanted to do fashion, going through school, were you somebody who could, it sounds like you could kind of focus on that, like school and everything. I'm just guessing based on what you've said so far. But like, would it be hard to not like drift off and to start sketching things in class, or would you still do that regardless?
Girl, I'm a Pisces.
Oh,
And
so you were sketching things in class.
Pisces, we're creative, we're dreamers, our heads are always in the cloud. At least mine is. Whenever I hear that about a Pisces, I'm like, yep, that's me. Um, so the thing about me is that I'm a chameleon, so I know how to adapt. And so I was a good student. I always had B's and A's. I was able to make my way through school. I hated homework, so I never did homework. I would wait till I would get to school the next day and like try to do my stuff really quick. Um, but I think I balanced it really well because my grandparents did have that hard line where like, if you fail school, we're gonna take away all your extracurriculars. And so that kept me in line for like being able to do good and not fail any class and just make sure I passed everything. And they weren't super strict. Like if I got a C, they were like, well, at least you passed. It's fine. Like they would kind of give me a little grief, but they wouldn't like really sit on it because they were like, well, you passed, you're fine. Just make sure you keep the grades up. But they always told me if you fail, that's it. No more drawing, no more ballet, no more hanging out with friends, no more doing this. So I always, even though I wanted to be in the clouds and like drawing all the time, I was like, okay, I need to focus. I need to make sure I pass this class.
That's so funny. I was kind of a little bit of both, right? I'm a Scorpio, but I'm a very good listener. So when especially, so when things would be going on, especially when it came to like English and history and stuff, I would listen, and oftentimes I would read like portions of a book, but then I'd always get like A's on my papers, and people would be like, "Are you kidding me? You didn't even read the book, blah blah blah." But I was like, "But I listened in class, and I used the conversations that were happening to write my essays." So I get that. I hated homework too. Girl, I hated homework. Like,
I think it's unnecessary. If I ever have kids, I'm not gonna push them to
well, especially now, it's like they get so much and they're so bombarded and so overwhelmed. You have to have homework and you have to have extracurricular I mean, I did a lot of those things growing up, right? I played softball, I was a cheerleader, I played indoor soccer for a little bit. And then you come home and you have to do homework, but it wasn't to the excess that it is now. Now it's just
No.
so crazy. I pobre kids, they just have like so much to do. No wonder there's always like mental health issues, right?
And I
Um,
think it's interesting here, sorry to interrupt, but
no, no.
one thing that I noticed is so in DR, and I can only speak for DR because it's the only other country I've grown up in, but you don't get the same subjects every day. So your schedule is a little different every day. So like, let's just say they teach you algebra and geometry at the same time, right? And so if you had algebra today, maybe you won't have algebra again until Tuesday or Wednesday. So like you're gonna have all these subjects to do homework for every day. And when I moved to the States, my schedule was identical every day. And I'm like, but I have homework for all the classes every day. What do you mean? So it's a lot more pressure here, which is interesting because they also teach a lot less credits in the US. Well, at least like in New York and Florida, where I went to school to finish my schooling. Um, it was a lot less subjects. So when they looked on my like my transcript, they were like, how have you taken so many credits? And I'm like, I don't know. That's how they teach in DR. They teach you a bunch of stuff. They were like, you already took algebra. That's like a senior house. They start teaching us algebra in like ninth grade.
Yeah,
So,
same here. I was in
yeah.
pre-algebra in eighth grade and was in algebra in in ninth grade in my freshman year. So when you moved here, did you move to New York, or because you said New York and Florida is where you finished? Where did you end up finishing high school in New York?
So I ended up finishing high school in Florida because when I moved to New York, they held me back a year because I guess that's their standard if you're coming from a different country or even certain states. Like if you move from like Florida to New York, they'll hold you back a year as well.
That's crazy.
I don't know if it's still like that, but that's how it was when I was there. Because I had classmates that were also supposed to be seniors that went back to junior. So I was in New York for one school year and the winter took me out and I was like, I can't do this. I can't survive here.
That
And
must have been a huge culture shock.
oh my God, it was literally 1 month left to the summer when I moved there, and I was not prepared for how cold it got and how quickly it got so cold. So then I moved to Florida because my dad lives in Florida. And I ended up going to like a charter school where like you finish school at your own pace. So then I ended up finishing my senior year in like 4 months because I only needed a certain amount of credits to finish. I didn't need to take an entire senior year, which was part of the reason I left New York too, because when I was meeting with my guidance counselor, my senior year was looking mostly like electives because I didn't need all the credits. And so I only needed to take like 4 classes to meet my graduation requirements. So I was like, well, I might as well move and go to a charter school to finish earlier because I was supposed to be done already.
Right.
So that's how I ended up in Florida. And then I was actually going to move back to New York, but I ended up meeting my husband. And so I stayed in Florida and then we moved to California.
Oh my God. So you met your husband young. You're
Yeah.
baby when you met your husband.
Yeah. When we met, I was 18. And when we got together, I was 19.
So yeah, you're a baby.
Yeah.
So being in Florida, obviously there is, what part of Florida were you in?
Orlando, the
Okay.
Central Florida.
Okay. So there's a lot more diversity and, well, I mean, New York obviously is super duper diverse. There's a lot of Dominicans. What's the makeup of Orlando in regards to diversity and in regards to like a Dominican population or other
So
Latinos?
there are a lot of Dominicans in Orlando. If you go to like towards Kissimmee, that's typically where there's most of the Dominicans. There's a lot of Puerto Ricans. I would say mostly Puerto Ricans are in Orlando. And then if you go to Miami, you have a lot of Cubans. So it's a lot of the islands, I would say, you find in Florida. But on my day-to-day, I will encounter a good 50-50 between Puerto Ricans and Dominicans in Orlando.
So, did you go to college after you graduated, or what was the path? Like, I want to start, connecting the dots towards the path of where you're at now.
So I did for like a year and a half, and then I dropped out because I was trying to go for accounting, which is not what I wanted to do. And in New York, I was trying to go to Parsons, but Parsons is incredibly expensive. So couldn't go there.
And
And
that's a fashion school, right?
yeah, Parsons is a really well-known fashion school. And so that's like where you want to go if you want to be like a fashion designer, right? And so I ended up dropping out of school, and then I tried re-enrolling, but then I realized I'm just so intrigued by so many things. I can't sit here and study the same thing for 4 years. So I just decided to learn things on my own. If I want to learn something, I just find a course, I learn it, and then I move on. And so I just ultimately decided that it just wasn't the path for me personally.
So, what was it about? Like, how long were you and your husband together before you decided to move to California? Because that's where he's from originally, right? Is California?
Yes. So he very shortly into us actually being together and have moved in together, he had to come for a family matter to California. And so I flew in for like 24 hours because at that time, me and my sister-in-law worked the same job, so we both couldn't take off at the same time. So I came for like 24 hours over the weekend. Him and my sister-in-law took me around LA and showed me like all the things that you need to see. And I honestly fell in love with California so much. And so I stopped talking about it ever since. And he was like, no, we need to go. You need to spend a few days there. You'll see, you won't like it or whatever. And so I went. We came for my, I think, 23rd birthday or something like that. And I was like, no, still love it. Still the place I want to be at. And so after it took me like 3 years to convince him to move here. And he finally decided he would move here. So, and now he's super thankful. Now he's like, I don't want to live in Florida.
I don't want to
But
live
it
in
took me
Florida
a
either.
little bit.
No, Florida, like anytime I go to Florida, I just feel like I'm constantly sweating and my hair gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, I already have big curly hair and it becomes bigger and frizzier and I just look crazy. I look like a nut. Um,
I can't even wear my hair out when I go to Florida. I get claustrophobic. I'm like, I can't do this. I don't
oh, I
know.
try, I say, and I use this term loosely. I try to straighten my hair when I'm in Florida, but by like the time I walk out, like everything under is already curled back
Yeah.
up, and it's just there's just no use. There's just no
Yeah.
use for it. What was the first thing that you remember, like not just designing, but that somebody else said, "Ooh, I want that." Like, where did you get that? And you're like, "That was me, baby."
So actually, I have never worn any of my actual designs out.
What? Sol,
And then I
what in
got
the
rid of
world?
them. I know. I think I wasn't prepared. So, for anybody who doesn't know, if you're gonna start your own line from scratch, like for your own designs, I don't know how to sew. That was always my weakness. And so I was hiring somebody else to sew for me, but it's incredibly expensive to start your line from scratch. And so I never actually wore on any of my designs out, and they're in a sketchbook in the back of a closet somewhere. But when
Which
it came
it will
to
come out one day, right?
one day,
It will
hopefully
come out
it
one
will
day.
come out. I have a lot of plans for
We're
Unbothered. So one
manifesting that
day,
for you, girl. Not,
yes,
I hope it will.
yes. And so what would happen actually is that I will wear my husband's t-shirts and everybody will like the way I style them. And so my husband will be like, why are you taking all my shirts? Why don't you just buy shirts that you like? And I'm like, because women's shirts just fit weird and you already have men's shirts. Why would I go buy more? Like, I can just wear yours. What's the point? And so that's kind of what started turning the wheels in my head of like, well, I could put out a line that everybody can wear, no matter how you identify. So, um, that's kind of what like started me transitioning into Unbother. And also, as you mentioned before, I wanted to be in a space where it's more sustainable. And with creating my own line, I felt like there was going to be a lot of waste because unfortunately, when you're a new and up and coming designer, your designs might not sell. You know, you might have to get rid of some stuff. You have to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. And so because I wanted it to be more sustainable, I wanted to go in a route where I knew I wasn't going to create a lot more waste because that's not what we need in the fashion industry.
That's interesting that you say you like the way your husband's shirts fit. I don't really wear much of my husband's clothes, but I always, because I also have a little panza, I hate the way men's shirts fit because I feel like it's tighter around my belly
You think
versus
so?
women's cut, which gives me a little bit of a
Mm,
waist again, and then it comes out, and I tend to feel like those fit me better.
I
So
see. Yeah.
yeah, and I always hate because men's shirts are just so straight and boxy
Hmm.
that I feel like, and I'm already like, you know, I'm chunky. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm working on it, but I am. Um, so I always feel like it makes me look even like it accentuates that versus women, but it's all but also in I'm chichona as well. So men's shirts tend to not fit in the chest either, unless
Mm.
it's really big and then it just drown. Then so it's always really funky to find the right type of shirt that's gonna still not be super tight on your bust, but not super loose, but that'll still give you some shape that's not going to be tight on your belly. I mean, it's just holiday high as women, all the stuff we got to go through, right?
I know. And I think that was my driving force because I think that listen, I love dressing all types of way. I'll wear super tight clothes, I'll wear super oversized clothes, but on my day to day, I like being comfortable. And so I just personally felt like all the women's shirts I was encountering in the market were doing what you'd say men's shirts did to you. Like they were hugging me in like the weirdest places. I felt super uncomfortable. The fabric wasn't good. Couldn't wash them because they will disintegrate in the washer after one wash. And so I think that really, made me consider what was lacking in the market for people who just want to wear comfortable clothes,
Yeah.
no matter how they're categorized.
So how do you decide, right? Like when you're coming up with a shirt or so all of your stuff, just so people know, all of your stuff is casual wear. So I was on the website and I'm not even kidding because I went on the website earlier today, but before I even went on the website, I was like, man, I really want a cute sweatsuit, and then I go to your website, I'm like, oh my gosh, so like she has the cutest styles of sweats. So it's just so funny that to I happened to say that and look, and think of that. And then I go to your website and boom, there it is. But how do you decide like what you're going to be? Because I do like that the cuts are very, very cute, but it's not super heavy on logo. It's like in the front. It's so you can feel like you're walking around, you are and supporting a Latina designer and not feeling like you're a walking billboard at the same time.
Yeah, so that's how I like to dress. So I put out what I like to wear because as a consumer, I can't sell you something that I personally wouldn't wear, right? And so when I'm thinking about new product, what I try to think about is what the land is lacking versus things that I can bring that are going to create income right away. And so I'm just trying to build this one-stop place where people can get their wardrobe for their day-to-day activities. And they can have everything from t-shirts to sweatpants to shorts to hoodies to tote bags, hats, and all that stuff. But I really try to sit and think what the brand is missing instead of just trying to just bring a new logo, the new t-shirt just for the heck of it. So like with the sweatpants and the sweatsuits, that had been in my brain since I launched the brand. And I couldn't find any that would like really mesh well with the brand or that were the quality that I wanted them to be. And so I was talking to my factory one day and I was like, I need sweatpants. I need new sweatshirts. Like I need to find ones. And they sent me some they had. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want because they're so soft. They feel so luxurious. Like they literally feel like you spent $200 on this set. Okay, 300, I don't know. And that's the feedback I get. So that's how I felt when I first put it on. I was like, oh my God, this is so soft and comfortable. And most of my things, the heavier winter things are French terry line, which is a different type of fleece. So it doesn't create those little fuzzy balls that you
Yeah.
get on sweatpants and things when you wash them over and over again. And so that makes it even softer because you don't have the winter fleece on the inside. And so that's how I felt when I first put it on. Then I bring it home and I show it to my husband. He's like, oh my God, this is nice. And I'm like, right? And then, because the way I test things out, I'll wear them over and over and over again before I actually bring them into the line. So I'll wear and wash and wear and wash and wear and wash to see how they hold up. And so I might be wearing something for months before it even comes out on the line. And so once I put it out and people started touching it and feeling it, they were like, this is so nice. Like this feels like I have a friend who always tells me, she's like, I feel rich when I'm wearing your clothes. Like I feel like I got monies. And I'm
I
like,
like
that's how I
I
want people
like
to
it.
feel.
I mean, I'm in
Yeah.
San Diego, so I saw the shorts and I was like, I need to get them shorts.
Yeah.
Because I love like those types of shorts, but so often they never have pockets.
Yes.
And it bugs the heck out of me. I'm like, why does this not have pockets? I'm sorry, but like everything that you wear should have pockets.
That's what I'm saying. For some reason, women weren't deserving of pockets
I
because
know.
we
Well,
should
you know
have
what?
purses.
Yes. Let me tell you, I don't know. Do you know who Cindy Castro is?
not,
She's a
it's not ringing
designer.
a bell.
Yeah, she's a designer out of New York, another Latina. She's amazing. I need to connect you guys. And so, but she does like high-end fashion. And I last year for my New York event, I got a dress from her and I didn't realize, but then I was like, oh, this has pockets. I was so excited. I was watching something and they're like, it doesn't matter how expensive or not or inexpensive something is. If a girl has pockets, they'll be like, I like your dress. Thanks, it has
It has
pockets.
pockets. Literally the first thing we say.
Yes. I get so excited. So when you're talking about sustainability, what for you, like what makes it sustainable for you and how do you keep those prices? Because look again, looking on your website, you're not paying $100 for a pair of sweats. You're like, they're reasonable for a hoodie. It's like $60. That's what you would pay anywhere. And sometimes you pay more. Like you're gonna pay $100 for a Nike hoodie, right? So how do you what does that mean to you and how do you maintain that type of price point?
So I, the way I'm trying to make the brand sustainable is by having good quality clothes that are not gonna fade away or break when you wash them a couple times, right? So like I want, because I feel like sometimes it's disheartening when you have that comfort clothing piece and then it breaks on you.
Yes.
So so I wanted something that was thick, wearable, durable, and that's how I feel the sustainable aspect is coming in, because you can buy one t-shirt and wear it and wear it and wear it and wear it, and it'll still be there for you and it won't break on you. I have t-shirts that I've had for 4 years now and they still look brand new. So that was how I was trying to focus on it, and then making it cost effective for the public, because I personally don't like buying $100 shirts. I feel like sometimes you're just buying the brand itself. The quality
Mhm.
might not be the best. If you know fabrics, if you go and actually look at the fabrics and the composition of the t-shirt, you know it's not anything out of this world for you to be paying that much money for it. And I felt like there was a lack on the market between those really cheap shirts that you can get and the really expensive ones. And so I wanted to fill in that gap and bring good quality clothing that people can afford and that they can wear over and over and over again. And that can be their like everyday piece.
Yeah. No, I that's so unbelievably important. I know for, myself and people I've talked to, I don't go out and buy clothes all the time. First of all, because I feel like I will wear something a few times and like you said, then all of a sudden I'll see a teeny hole or a couple of teeny, and I'm like, seriously, I just watched this 2 times, or I've only had this shirt for like 6 months. And so for me, I would rather spend a little bit more money and have a piece is that I can wear for years. And even better if I don't have to save for to do that, right? If I don't have to save for 6 months just to buy like two pieces of clothing. Um, so I think that you're right. That is something that is absolutely needed. How do you have a storefront? Is everything done online?
So we do have our headquarters in Gardena. I'm not there today because it's a little noisy and I wanted it to be nice and quiet. It gets a little noisy sometimes, but um, yeah, we have a headquarters in Gardena and the office is open to the public. So if you're local in the SoCal area and you want to come, you can make an appointment and you can shop, and I have snacks and I have sparkling water and soda and water for everybody there. But we also every so often do pop-ups, mostly in the OC area. I'm not doing as many these past couple years, so I'll do one every couple months or something like that. And then we have our online store that everybody can shop at, and we're also on TikTok Shop. So TikTok Shop always has different discounts, and I know a lot of people don't trust it, but it's a legitimate, like you have to
Well,
submit a lot of
the
paperwork
the
to have a
light that
storefront
I'm
on
using
TikTok.
right now is from TikTok Shop.
Yeah, so From a
That's
brand's
why you see
perspective.
a giant light right in my forehead.
So I've bought a few things too, but from a brand's perspective, you have to submit a lot of paperwork and a lot of things, and they're actually really picky with how you categorize the product and how you put it out there. So, so much so that some people that were putting out like copyrighted products started getting their shops taken down. So yeah, that's the methods we use. I always tell people go to TikTok shop first because they do discounts that I have no control over. So like whenever you see a discount on a product, the actual shop is not the ones giving the discount, it's TikTok putting up the discount for that
So
shop.
that doesn't affect your like your revenue when they give the
No,
discounts.
no. So they'll pay the shop the full price and then
That's
they'll
good to know because that's
give the
something that I
client the
was like, oh my
discount.
gosh, is it coming out of the company? Because obviously there's a lot of small businesses on TikTok shop. So
Right.
that's really, really good to know. How, speaking of, because we know that who knows what's going to happen with TikTok, right? But right now it's here. How much has TikTok impacted your business?
I think TikTok has been a huge impact to my brand because it's such a tight-knit community, I feel. And I feel like there's a lot more support on TikTok and it's so much more organic on TikTok. So I do a lot of dancing videos, like goofy dancing videos on the Unbothered page. And I was telling this story a couple weeks ago, but the way I started TikTok, well, I started like posting, like trying to do it like Instagram, and it wasn't working because they're two different platforms. And so one day I did like a little silly dance from a trend and I like introduced the brand in that way. And I was like, the Sunbother, an Afro-Latina owned brand, is a unisex clothing brand. And the video blew up. And I was like, oh, well, I can just do this for TikTok. And so I started kind of doing that. So I have a lot of fun on TikTok, and I know it's a lot of a lot of people's livelihood. So I hope the app stays. But we can't control it. But I personally love it.
Yeah. But it's here now, so we just got to live in that, right? What has been one of the biggest challenges, or has there ever been a time when you thought, you know what, I can't do this anymore?
All the time.
You're all
I
daily.
yeah, I think people think that it's so glamorous being a business owner and like you have your whole life and whatever. And listen, I'm very blessed. I understand it's a huge privilege to be able to be a brand owner and be self-employed and all of that, but it does not come without challenges. And so in those challenges are here, you question certain decisions, you know. But I think for me, luckily, I'm always open to signs. And so whenever something bad happens or something that kind of brings me down or makes me question a certain decision I made for the brand, then something good happens. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. Okay, I made the right decision. This is why I am doing this. So I do question it. I do, you know, it's retail is a really hard space to break into because it's so overly saturated. I mean, there's 1,000 and a million brands. There's everything, it has been done, right? And so I think that can be a little discouraging, but the way I like to think about it is that I'm putting out the best product I think I can put out, and I'm trying to make a little bit of change in the world of fashion with my brand, and that's all I can focus on. And knowing that I can do those things make me happy, and so it pushes me to keep the brand going.
What would you say what are other like brands or designers or anything like that you feel have inspired you?
So for brands, Telfar inspired me immensely because I feel like they also filled in a gap in the market that was missing. So you get the designer bag, but you're not paying 5, 6,000, $3,000 for it, right? It's a Black owned brand. So to see a person of color make it that big in the industry was a huge inspiration. A lot of my friends are business owners, and so I'm very inspired by their brands. I know Shirley from House of Curls. They're located in New York. I am inspired by her every day. Julissa, who owns Rizos Curls, I'm inspired by her every day, and I'll text them and I'll ask them, like, hey, I'm trying to do this. What do you think? Did you do this too? Am I crazy? So I think a lot of my inspiration are close friends, actually. A lot of the people that I feed off of are friends that I've made even smaller businesses on the pop-ups that we do. I make it a point to walk around and stop by the booths and say hi to people, so I've met a lot of women entrepreneurs through there, and we keep tabs with each other, and we ask each other, like, how are you doing? How do you think this went? Should I do it? What do you think? Or how did you do this? And I think beyond being inspired by the people who have already made it, just having a community of people that are going through the same thing that you're going through, it's the biggest blessing you can have in life, because it
Yeah.
truly puts it into perspective. Because as much as bigger designers are an inspiration, I think it can also feel like, oh, well, how did they make it? And I'm not making it. And so seeing people who made it, but also people who are in the journey with you, it's really, really inspiring.
Yes, no, I get that because I know, I love seeing my friends succeed. I love like cheering them on, and I love saying their names in rooms that they're not in. And then there's sometimes where I'm where's my stuff, right? Like I think it's
Hmm.
natural. By the way, these are Rizos curls, just so you know. And Julie has actually
Very
been a
proud.
guest on the podcast as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
She's so sweet. She's so
Yeah.
sweet.
You know what? I will say this. I think when you tap into something, right? Because I don't see, to be perfectly honest, you see like JZD, right? Who also does more like casual day-to-day stuff in yourself. And then you see and then you see other people who just do a mix of things. And there's room for all of us. There's room for everybody. And I think I love hearing you say that you get advice from people who have walked your path, right? Or have walked the path and are willing to share with you, because that is so important, that we don't block the success of others, right? Because then that
Yeah.
blocks our own success. So I love hearing that. What is the next thing for you? What is the next thing for Unbothered?
Ooh. I have a lot of plans. I'm crazy. I tell my husband, I'm like, God bless, because you married not only somebody who's creative, but also somebody who like dives headfirst into anything they want to do. And so my poor husband just tags along and, is there cheering me on. But for Unbothered, I hope to grow it. I have a lot of plans for the brand, but some of the immediate plans we have is that next year we want to start kind of touring a few states and maybe hosting a few events. So hopefully we're able to make that happen and just kind of bring Unbothered in person to other people, because honestly, I see the biggest reaction when people can actually touch the clothes and see the brand in person, and they realize what quality um they're actually dealing with the clothes, because online you can't really tell. So,
Yeah.
them being able to see it in person. So our hope with my PR team, Lisbeth and Kemami, the Kemami team, I'm hoping that we're able to make that happen next year and we can bring Unbothered to a few different places in the United States.
Yeah, we'll have to talk because last year I did a tour. This year I'm have, my events in San Diego and New York, but next year I want to be able to hit more cities again. Last year we did LA, Dallas, and New York.
Nice.
So we'll have to talk. Maybe we can work together on something.
Yeah, that would be so nice.
Yes. Because we did some pop-ups with Cadena Collective in Dallas
Hmm.
and with Cindy Castro in New York. We had hers as well. So we'll have to talk and see what we can come up with.
Yeah. Oh my God. That would be so
So
exciting.
so okay, the brand is called Unbothered. What bothers you, and how do you maintain being unbothered?
Oh my God. So many things. So it's funny that you asked that because a lot of people, when they see me in person, they're like, well, how are you unbothered? How do you do that? I'm like, it's a work in progress. It's not like a thing that you become from one day to the next. And so um I try to not internalize a lot of things and to just know that people are kind of living their own life and they might do some effed up stuff, but it's not always you and you shouldn't always internalize it, you know? As a perfect example, I was driving to the office this morning, so I had some things that I needed to do, and this guy pulls up next to me and like flicks me off because I guess I wasn't driving to his liking. And I was listening to like freaking Britney and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all the oldie goodies songs that I love. And I was dancing and I was like, you know what? You can be mad. I'm enjoying my Friday morning. It's okay. So I think it's about those little things. Like, I feel like sometimes those little things accumulate and we let them like pick at us. And
Mhm.
so I think it's about just not letting the little things get to you. Obviously, there's bigger things that are going to affect our mood and are going to affect us. That's just life. But I think it's about not letting those little things bring you down. And like, if you're in a good mood, just because somebody else is in a bad mood doesn't mean that you need to be in a bad mood as well. So that's kind of how I try to approach the whole unbothered mentality.
We've already hit an hour.
Oh my
Isn't that
God.
isn't that crazy? I know I was
I
looking at
know.
time. I'm like, oh my gosh, this flew by. I could ask you a million more questions, but
I know.
I want to be, mindful of our time and everything. But I always, if there's one last thing, if there's anything that we didn't touch on or anything else that you want to share, please do so now.
Yeah, so we have our Hispanic Heritage Month t-shirt. I'm wearing it now. It says Dique Unbothered. And for anybody who doesn't speak Spanish or who's not familiar with the word dique, it means supposedly. And touching back, the reason I decided to make this shirt is because it's a work in progress to be unbothered. And so this is a constant reminder, like it's okay to be a work in progress. We're still moseying on through life, right?
Well,
So
girl,
we
look at this. That I get it. I get
there
it. It's
you go.
permanent,
You see?
permanent with my
There you go.
cinturita on my hat on my
And so we have this t-shirt and we're donating 15% of all the proceeds from these shirts to an organization. Um, and so you can go to our webpage. We have all the information there. And yeah, so we're trying to make it happen, trying to put a little grain of sand into the world and help. And with this shirt, and it's limited edition, so whenever they're gone, they're gonna be gone. And then we have our XL tote, which is a new drop from about a month and a half ago. That was a big, long time coming for the brand, but we're really excited about it because you can fit your entire life into that tote. So we're happy that we were able to put it out there.
Nice. Well, if people want to go to your website, it's Unbothered Fashion, but it's UNBTHRD fashion.com. It's Unbothered Fashion, the same spelling on Instagram. And or if you want to follow Sol directly, it's Sol Paulino on Instagram as well. And we'll have all the links in the show notes so people can link directly. But if you don't have a chance to go to the show notes, then just rewind and listen to it and type it in correctly.
Yeah. And really quickly, just to let everybody know, the organization is called United We Dream, and they focus on immigration laws and helping undocumented immigrants learn their rights and the things that they can do to get established in the country.
That's amazing. I loved hearing that. I love hearing that. So thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your story, you sharing your journey. My parents live in Orange County, so I might have to just make a trip over to your
Yes.
headquarters, check
Where do you
everything
live?
out. I'm in San Diego.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
listen, maybe I'll take a day trip and we can hang out or something.
Girl, I got lots of wine here.
I
Oh,
know.
wait,
I've
you don't
been
drink,
trying
you
to
don't
go.
drink.
That's okay. I can have a sparkling water.
Yeah, yeah.
But
We'll get some
I've been
sparkling water for you.
I've been trying to go to San Diego. Like every year I'm like, I want to go and then I don't go, but I need to go. I need
You
to
could
go.
take the train.
I know. I just need to take a weekend and go, honestly, because It's ridiculous
Bring
that I
your
haven't been
husband, we'll
back.
have like a double date.
Oh yeah, that'll be so much fun.
Thank you so, so much. And until next time, mi gente.
Thank you.